being somebody who's never too proud to admit that when I'm wrong, or when I may well be wrong, I've been slating one of Cesar Milan's clips a bit recently, and it's dealing with aggression, or in a fearfully aggressive German Shepherd. And it's one where I've shown a couple of clips where he's booted the dog in the solar plexus and then chambered to give it another kick before it was cut, before the seam was cut. And the dog's basically been dragged into a situation that is way too much for it to be able to handle. And as a result, Cesar's ended up with it's got a prong on, it's got a choke on. As I say, it gets a couple of whaps to the guts, and Cesar's holding it there, and then it gets given over to another trainer to take it through. Well, I was thinking when I was first looking at this, I thought, as anybody, the vast majority of people would, what a load of crap. You know, you've obviously jumped in too deep with a dog that's unable to swim. So I've been criticising it, but then I've had a look through a bit of literature. The purpose behind it was to actually support what I'm thinking. But actually, what it's done is it's supported what Cesar's done, and it's actually gone against what I'm thinking. So as I say, I take my hat off, and I'm willing to accept the fact that he's obviously done something that's got some scientific backing to it. And the reason I say that is because the scientific backing that he's got comes from Steve Lindsay's book. I don't know if anyone's got it, but it's that one there. Applied Training and Applied Dog Behaviour and Training. Mine's well used, as you can see. It's got bloody earmarks and post-it notes all over it. But in there, I think it's about page 290, 291, Steve Lindsay talks about the fact that in order for it to be effective, I know that if for flooding to be effective, you need to be able to prevent the response. You know, if a dog wants to get away, or if a dog wants to attack as a result of fear in a specific context, then you need to be able to safely prevent that from happening, and it needs to happen for sufficient enough time for that to die down. Then you end the session. So you end the session with the dog in a calm state rather than the dog in an agitated state. Take the dog back in and repeat, and each session goes for long enough that the dog basically unlearns what it has previously learned as a coping mechanism in that situation. And then what you can do is you can bring in alternative behaviours that the dog knows, which you can then reward. So you then start counter conditioning after you've flooded. And flooding is response prevention. So what I'm seeing in Stephen Lindsay's book, and which is evidenced quite heavily in there, referenced quite heavily in there, is the fact that if you've got a dog that you take into a situation and you're starting to flooding is your intention, and that dog attempts to escape, firstly, correct it. Doesn't say how, it just says correct it. So if I'm Cesar Milan and somebody says to me, you've kicked that dog in the chest, I'd refer him to basically what is the Bible of dog training and behaviour modification. That's what I'm told. It says correct it. I've corrected it. Whether you like it or not makes no difference. I've corrected the dog for attempting to carry out a response, a behaviour that's worked for it in the past. I'm here to try and help this dog. I want to try and sort it out. I want to try and get it used to this environment. So I'm going to terminate as quickly as I possibly can any response which is incompatible with that aim. Secondly, the other thing, and this is very, very interesting, Lindsay cites a study in there concerning the use of food. See, a lot of people using systematic desensitisation or counter-conditioning for a fearful response will basically progressively show the item that put the dog in the environment in which the dog is known to have a fearful response, and they'll feed it. They'll feed it for incompatible behaviours, or they'll feed it for calmness. They'll reward calmness. This has actually been shown to be counterproductive, not only wholly unnecessary. This is going against what I've thought as well. You know what I've done, but you live and learn, don't you? And it's always good to learn. But it's not only is it shown to be wholly unnecessary, but it's also shown to be counterproductive, because what you do is you actually mask the fear response and instead elicit the acquisition. So the dog's going into the situation looking to acquire food. However, when the dog is then presented with that same situation devoid of any food or any treat dispenser, the old picture, if you want to use Temple Grandin's thinking in pictures sort of like analogies, the old picture comes back, and that picture is, there's something that I'm afraid of, there is no food, I'm afraid again. And what you're actually doing then is reinforcing that fear. And like we know, if you reinforce something, you make it stronger and you make it more resistant to extinction. So if you go down that route with feeding incompatible responses and you actually fail, what you're then going to have is a dog that's got a stronger response in that situation, a stronger escape avoid response. And what you've then done is taught it that incompatible behaviours that are trained with food don't work. You know, you've shown the dog, I've already done that, I've already fed in that situation, I've already been rewarded in that situation, but I know that when I'm presented with that situation alone, the rewards won't come, so I'm still afraid of it. Which is really, really interesting, because it goes against probably about 98% of everything that you'll read that says that you should reward train and, use rewards, treats, generally food, in fearful situations, using the gauge or using appetite as a gauge of the fear response, because obviously the more scared you are, the less likely you are to eat. But as I say, it's interesting that it has actually been proven to be counterproductive to the actual overall aim. So, what am I saying? I'm saying sorry, Cesar Milan. Like you're going to see this. I'm saying sorry, Cesar Milan, for jumping to conclusions and criticising what I saw. I still disagree with it. I still think that kicking a dog in the solar plexus isn't the best way to correct a dog. But if you're correcting it and that's your choice of correction, and it works for the dog and the dog no longer has any fearful response, then who am I to criticise further? Cheers.